Hey people, good morning. It's great to be with you again. It's been the end of the year. We've had a wonderful Christmas season. We're now going into the new year. And so this week is the beginning of our new series of devotionals that we're going to be taking you through over the course of this next 2024. But can I just very quickly, without prolonging this thing, just wish you all the best for the new year. I really hope that this year is one of experience of the extravagant love of God, the extravagant power of God within you to achieve what God wants to achieve through you. And I hope that this year is going to be a very special one. Last year for many was a tough year. We understand that. But I guess in that sense, you'll identify with what I'm about to speak to you about over this next few weeks. In the book of the New Testament, we have some incredible characters. Now, I want to take you to the book of 1 Peter for this particular series. Now, 1 Peter is a great book written by probably one of the most colorful New Testament characters. His name is Peter. Now, when you think of Peter, you think of so many different things. You think the highs of Peter as he got out of the boat and he walked on water. And he was the only disciple courageous enough to do what Jesus told him to do. They could have all got out and walked on water, but Peter was the only one. We see how the high of him declaring Jesus to be the Son of God. And Jesus saying, Peter, you're right on the button there, man. That is who I am. And then you see the incredible lows of Peter's life as Peter would have denied Jesus in the garden prior to Jesus' crucifixion. And so we see this wonderful character. And I guess he reminds me of so many people that I know who journey through faith. God is able to use you despite you. God is able to use you despite your very obvious flaws and sometimes the things that are just not always conducive to what normal Christianity would be considered to be normal too. So be encouraged today that I guess as we do this series, you along with me certainly are going to identify with this wonderful man, Peter. But he comes out, this is written some 63 odd years after the birth of Jesus, would have meant now that it would be 30 years after the resurrection and the ascension of Christ, that Peter is writing to the then church, the first century church. And he's talking to them about some of the prevailing issues of the day. The biggest one being they're going through incredible persecution. The first century church, first of all, the Jewish people and the Romans just thought, this Christian fad will dry up and it will blow away. But it didn't. It just went from strength to strength. And we see how Peter's coming up 30 years after the resurrection of Jesus. And now a Roman emperor is in charge. His name is Nero. And he's a great persecutor, very creative in his ability to persecute the church, very imaginative in how to try and get rid of Christians. Now remember, back in those days, and in fact people all down through the years, the world has felt that in order to get rid of Christians, let's just kill them. Let's just wipe them out and they'll dry up and blow away. But we find that the opposite is often true. You know, I love planting trees. But there comes a stage in every tree's life where it needs to be pruned. And sometimes as I'm pruning these trees, I'm thinking, man, that's really uncomfortable for this tree. When I say to the tree, I say, hey, pal, this branch needs to go. And I can just sense the tree saying, no, not that branch, not that branch. That's my favorite branch. And I have to cut that sucker off before it destroys or makes the tree look like I don't want it to look. And so we too, as believers, have to go through this persecution or this pruning time. Now, I think the church needs a better theology on persecution. We have a very weak theology on a number of things. We have a weak theology on a thing called suffering. We have a weak theology on a thing called persecution because we believe some of the things that maybe we've heard on TV or seen on YouTube. You people need to watch less YouTube and read more of the Bible, because the Bible is very clear that tough times are part of the deal. And Jesus never hides this from anybody. He said to the disciples, he said that you will be persecuted. that the world is going to hate you and do all manner of evil against you, just as they did to me, Jesus. And so this is part of what the Christian experience is about. So here, before we begin to even read the text, get a picture of the context before we talk about the text. The context is 30 years after the resurrection of Jesus. Intense persecution by Nero is taking place. Nero is lighting up his driveway with burning Christians on crosses. He is a mean, mean man. But this was the first big test that the Christian church had to go through. There was the test of worshiping idols. There was the text of so many other things as well. But the text of persecution, in the context of persecution, was the big deal that they all had to face at this time. Now, we sit here in our comfortable little place. Not so comfortable today because it's pouring with rain and has been and will be for a while. So I thought, well, let me sneak out and get a week of devotionals together for you so that we can just set the scene as to what this persecution is looking like. It's not somebody saying, where about you? It's where you're a Christian, you could lose your life, your family, your job, your income, your everything could be lost if you were a Christian back in these times. So in that context today, we're going to get into the next couple of days talking about Peter's word of encouragement to those who are going through not just tough times, but incredibly tough times by way of this persecution. But the lesson we learn from Peter is to get out of our victim's mentality. Oh man, this is going to kill you. A victim's mentality, it's woe is me, and you think you're the only person who's ever been through a tough time. People, get over yourselves. People have been going through tough times forever. And they haven't listened to the television preachers who tell you that everything is beautiful and everything is going to be wonderful. And they're only telling you about half of the story. The other half is what we're going to talk about soon. So I hope you can stick with me. I hope that'll be beneficial. But Peter tells us in the face of persecution to rejoice. Now that sounds like an oxymoron, doesn't it? Eh? That sounds like an incredible paradox. In persecution, rejoice. When you read the letter, you'll see why. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.